Here on the Sabaton History Channel, we have done one or more episodes dedicated to almost every single song that has appeared as a regular track on one of Sabaton's albums that deal with military history. We haven't done everything from Metalizer, basically, right? But, and sure, there's some bonus tracks and preludes and things, but almost every single song that's a regular song on a Sabaton album except one.
And that is Firestorm.
The end of July 1943. Hamburg's firefighters have spent the last couple of days trying to stem the damage from British bombing raids. High explosives have not just ruined many buildings, but have also torn craters into the streets, which has made rescue attempts difficult. But although the water reserves are running low, it seems like they'll manage. But then, on the night of July 27th, a fleet of 730 British bombers appears over the city. More than 2,300 tons of bombs are dropped in just 1 hour, this time including 17,000 incendiary bombs. Major fires break out all over the city, which soon merge together in a storm of fire. Wooden structures combust under the immense heat of up to 800 degrees Celsius. The strong summer winds begin to drive the inferno through the streets, and the heat drives them to hurricane speeds of 240 kilometers an hour. Craving oxygen, the firestorm sucks at the air with such force that buildings collapse and trees are uprooted from the ground. People are sucked into the flames and immediately incinerated. Thousands of others die slowly from carbon monoxide poisoning in shelters. Hamburg burns. The flames destroy 12 square miles and kill more than 18,500 people in just that night alone. By August 3rd, after 2 more raids, 60% of Hamburg has been burned and more than 35,000 of its inhabitants are dead. The Germans are stunned, dazed with disbelief. For British Bomber Command, it is a resounding success. The scale of the conflagration and the ensuing firestorm are not an accident or a byproduct of the bombing. It has worked just as intended. Hamburg had been #1 on the target list for well over a year. British scientists had been studying the meteorological conditions and the wind speeds in and out of the city for months. High winds would be the best catalyst for the firestorm they sought to unleash. Questions revolved around how many fires needed to be started until it became an uncontrollable force of its own, one that would ultimately overwhelm the German firefighters. Bombing trials were scheduled and models of the city's urban areas were built to accurately study the vulnerability of German houses to fire. The main target of the incendiary raid was to be the most densely packed residential area of the city, close to its center. At first, a group of Pathfinder bombers would drop aluminized strips to create false echoes on the German radar screens, right? Shielding the coming planes from coordinated fighter attacks. A second group would drop small anti-personnel explosives with delayed action triggers to intimidate the rescue efforts. Some were timed for between 3 and 10 minutes after impact. Others would explode if they were hit by a jet of water. Then the main force would arrive and drop incendiaries like magnesium bombs mixed with an oil base. The Mark II incendiary bomb was a deadly mixture of white phosphorus and benzol gel. Everything worked as planned in creating the perfect firestorm. Hamburg was burnt to ashes. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill had promised Soviet High Command a year earlier that although an invasion of Europe was not yet possible, they would continue to attack the Germans at every possible occasion. At first, the sporadic bombing raids against German cities had been a way for the Royal Air Force to show defiance. When they happened, the Germans had to use valuable military and administrative resources to fight them off, and these were desperately needed at the battlefronts. But now, the British were determined to turn those raids into a strategic concept, one that would break not only Germany's military capabilities, but break the population's spirit. And Churchill had just the right man at hand to fulfill such a goal. Air Marshal Arthur Harris had been appointed Commander-in-Chief of the British Royal Air Force as part of the new Area Bombing Directive in February 1942. Harris already had a reputation as a ruthless and uncompromising leader who had personal contempt for the Germans and the totalitarianism of the Nazis. He fully expected air power to win the war, and possibly even avoid a costly invasion of Europe against entrenched fanatics, as he called them. If he just had a fleet of 1,000 bombers, Harris argued, he could reduce any major German city to rubble. His proposed mass carpet bombing campaigns would shorten the war, and the more ruthlessly they attacked, the more it would save Allied lives in future. Harris proposed that instead of attacking single factories or military targets, they should bomb the urban centers of Germany's cities. For him, the tightly packed worker districts were valuable targets. Total war was the people's war. Each industrial worker was as important to the war effort as the soldier at the front was. If the bombers targeted urban areas, they would affect several industries at once, too, either through absenteeism or the death of the workers. If they wanted to win this war, Harris argued, they would have to kill a lot of Germans either way. Dehousing the Germans was also the most likely way to break their will to resist, as losing one's home was considered to have the most demoralizing effect. The Nazis entered this war under the rather childish delusion that they were going to bomb everybody else and nobody was going to bomb them. At Rotterdam, London, Warsaw, and half a hundred other places, they put that rather naive theory into operation. They sowed the wind, and now they are going to reap the whirlwind. Cologne, Lübeck, Rostock. These are only just the beginning. We cannot send 1,000 bombers at a time over Germany every time as yet, but the time will come when we can do so. Arthur Harris, June 1942. Such biblical terms were not accidental. The attack on Hamburg was codenamed Operation Gomorrah for the apocalyptic scenery it would produce. Like the British propaganda said, Harris also stood behind the fact that the incendiary attacks on German cities were not simple acts of terror bombing. They were retaliation, acts of revenge for what the Luftwaffe had done during the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. The bombing of Coventry in November 1940 was seen as the example of German cruelty. Although the Luftwaffe's aim had been to cripple the local aircraft industry, much of its heavy bombs and incendiaries had fallen upon the residential areas, causing a high civilian death toll and the destruction of the city. Harris and British Bomber Command would now, as the war turned, Coventry German cities as well. In the first 4 months of 1945, British bombers dropped 4 times the bomb tonnage on German cities that the Luftwaffe had dropped during its 10-month-long campaign against Britain. On the night of February 13th, Dresden burned. 800 Lancaster bombers dropped more than 2,600 tons of bombs on the mostly undefended city. Nearly half of the bombs were incendiary, and more than 15 square miles of the city was devastated by fire. Dresden's historic center burned to ashes as more than 75,000 houses succumbed to the firestorm. Over 25,000 people are estimated to have been killed that night. In Britain, people began to question such actions. Was this really justified? Was this not just terror against civilians? Dresden hadn't been a fortress city, nor did it have major war-related industries. Instead, it was full of refugees and evacuees fleeing the Eastern Front. But Harris wanted to see the city bombed because it would make the German administration in the sector collapse and would delay the transport of German troops to the front. It was war, after all. But even as the final phase of the war began and more cities burned, there was no sign of surrender, not in Germany, not in Japan. The U.S. had been confronted by the destructiveness of modern air power when Japanese naval aircraft attacked Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941. Actually, Harris lived in Washington, D.C. at the time and was busy closing a deal with the American aircraft industry as news of that air raid came in. Since the early 1930s, American military planners had foreseen the need for long-range bombers for a future war fought far from American shores. So they had been developed. While any retaliation was seen as a good thing, Tokyo itself was on the target list for retaliation bombing after the Doolittle raid of April 1942. that had little more than propaganda effect, similar to the initial British raids on the German Rhineland. But then, with Harris establishing a working relationship between the British and American air leaders, the U.S. Air Force began studying the efficiency of firebombing. The development of the B-29 Superfortress bomber pretty much embodied the possibility of destroying a city from the air. With a range of over 3,200 miles, that's over 5,000 kilometers, it could easily reach the Japanese homeland from American forward air bases, and each plane could deliver a bomb load of up to 20,000 pounds, that's over 9,000 kilos. Such a fleet would finally not only get revenge for Pearl Harbor, but do it 1,000-fold. By February 1945, they were ready, and U.S. Air Force General Curtis LeMay ordered the first large-scale bombing runs against Tokyo. By then, Japanese defensive capabilities had been very much diminished. Their air force barely existed anymore. The fleet was shattered, industry marginalized. Still, Tokyo refused to surrender, even after the first low-altitude raids began. Japanese people still went to work as their families grew accustomed to the daily air raids. Each night, they went to bed fully dressed to not waste time in case of an attack. But this was to little avail on the night of March the 9th, when 279 B-29 bombers appeared in the skies over the capital. In the darkness, at an altitude of just under 2,500 feet, they dropped more than 1,600 tons of bombs. Most of them were cluster bombs, each releasing several smaller napalm and oil-based incendiary bomblets. M47 incendiaries, a mix of gelled gasoline and white phosphorus, ignited as they dropped into the tightly packed residential areas. The ensuing conflagration was even more devastating than those in Germany. A firestorm was ignited as the columns and walls of flames were whipped through the streets. Since the Japanese used more wood in the construction of their buildings than Europeans, the devastation was more total. Large parts of the capital were simply obliterated by the flames, leaving more than 1 million people homeless. The numbers are still disputed, but somewhere between 88,000 and 200,000 people fell victim to the flames. In the end, it mattered little if such raids were justified or not. Firebombing gave way to a dangerous precedent. Such carpet bombing runs with high explosives and incendiaries did not just kill people, they incinerated them. They blew them to pieces. They deliberately asphyxiated them or burned them alive. It was another line crossed, yet another extreme of total war. When months later arguments raged about the ethical use of the atomic bomb, people began pointing fingers to Hamburg, to Dresden, to Tokyo. Mass extinction was already here. The atom bomb, so an argument went, might actually be more humane.
Carpet-bombing cities and grinding them to dust. Able men and women will all be victims. Everyone will suffer in the wake of that attack. Bombers show no mercy, a land in ruin. Homes are turned to rubble when the last strike's been approved. Facing the destruction, fear the black wings of death.
Now, this is a rather dark subject, of course, the carpet bombing and the Allied carpet bombing, which many people tend to forget. That's also a part of the war. But this is on The Art of War.
Yes.
This has to do with Sun Tzu.
Yes. He was ahead of his time with carpet bombings.
Yeah, he invented carpet bombing in ancient China.
Yes.
But they used actual carpets back then?
Yes. I mean, it wasn't plane that were doing carpet bombing. They were on carpets, flying carpets and bombing.
See, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Can we get an illustration? No, we can't get an illustration of that. But what made you think of this to illustrate Sun Tzu?
Well, I think the chapter was something like Destruction by Fire, or I can't remember, one of the second to last chapter.
Okay.
In the Art of War, and the only thing the most fitting in modern military conflict was carpet bombing. I think that corresponded to that chapter.
Now, of course, he wasn't thinking of carpet bombing.
No.
Flaming arrows, I guess.
Yeah, destroy your opponent's supplies and everything in that manner.
And so many people actually forget about things like that. I know, on the World War II channel, now it's December 1941, And of course, the war in the Pacific. Well, the U.S. is not neutral anymore, shall we say?
Yes.
But one thing that the Japanese did not do in the period when they had naval supremacy in South Pacific and Southeast Asia, it did not try to destroy the American supply lines or the connection between Australia and the U.S. or dominance in the Indian Ocean. It wasn't. They were more focused on their actual goals instead of. They had some mess ups in their high command, but they should have listened to Sun Tzu.
They should have, yes.
Because if your enemy has no supplies, eventually.
You're in trouble, yeah.
Yeah. And we said at the very, very beginning that this is the last of the regular album songs that we've done.
Yes.
Did you realize that?
Not until quite recently, actually.
And by quite recently, you mean when I said it?
Yes, actually.
Because I don't think Per had either when we were talking about which songs to do. You know, this shooting, these are all the ones that we're doing like this month that you're seeing, which is why I have this bandage on my hand for like 7 weeks in a row. Because it's just not healing. It's because I was attacked by fire. They destroyed my supply lines. It was terrible. But yeah, it was when I was going through the albums and stuff and thinking, we've done them all.
Man.
I mean, we've done some part 2s and part 3s and stuff. And you guys, I'm sure you're wondering, well, what's going to happen next? But you'll find out soon enough. And then I was thinking, well, why don't we go through Metalizer and do every song on that? But what would the history parts cover, you know?
Oh.
Okay, pick a song. Pick a song on Metalizer.
We do have one that could work. Per Scream Speeder.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm going to...
Did you guys hear that? That was Paris Screaming Peter. He's off directing.
I'm gonna kill him for it.
Okay.
No.
So if you'd like to play bass with Sabaton, now's your chance.
Now is your chance.
Hashtag Joachim killed Per. You have to have an A with 2 dots on your computer keyboard, though. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Nope.
Because then it'd just be par.
Yeah.
And that'd be silly.
You can't have that.
Oh, well. Easy come, easy go. Anyhow,
Yep.
back to the Metalizer. Okay, Peter.
I think it would be actually Burn Your Crosses, that song.
Okay.
It's about a man, sentenced to death for crimes he did not commit. And questioning his faith in Christianity or religion and such.
I'm trying to think of that. I'd be like, so we could write at the history part about...
Religious persecution?
And about...
It has happened in history, I've heard.
I think once.
Once.
There was a time... Well, you've done plenty of songs that had to do with, religion-based things and stuff that turn up here and there and stuff. That's interesting, though, the shift from Metalizer to the other stuff. When you think back to when you began to really focus on, was it just one day or was it over a period of weeks and months when you thought, this is just the way it's going to be? Or did it just turn out that way when you started?
Well, we had a few songs written before we actually went into album production with Primo Victoria, but I think that song was a bit of the start as well, because we had the music, me and Per were sitting down to write the lyrics, and we thought it has a big sound to it.
Yeah.
We can't sing about, booze and babes and
Yeah.
whatever with this song. So we decided that we were gonna do, D-Day, something that mattered. And all of a sudden, things started clicking for us.
Yeah.
It made sense. I mean, we're interested in history, and there are enough bands singing about killing dragons and drinking beer. So we thought, well...
And babes, don't forget the babes.
Don't forget the babes.
Yeah.
No, so it's... we sort of, let's make the whole album about military history.
Yeah.
And the more we got into it, I mean, it all made sense for us, because before that day, writing lyrics were sort of a necessary evil.
Okay.
All of a sudden, it became fun and interesting and engaging,
Well, that's cool. That's really cool. You found your mojo, I guess you'd call it. But so when you're touring and stuff, do you ever play songs from Metalizer?
It has happened. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we did, was it 4 or 5 years ago? We did the song 7734. I think 3 years ago we played in the Netherlands, and Frederick, I think it was from Bloodbound, joined us on keyboards, and we played Hellrider, which is a song we haven't played in 10 years at least.
Really cool. How does the audience react to that, though? Do they know that album as well as some of the others?
Well, depends, actually. With the song 7734, we had that re-recorded on a special edition of, I think it was the Heroes album, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And then people had heard it, of course, because it was, released again, and re-released. But the Metalizer song was Hellrider. Yeah, we played in Netherlands. No, I would say 50% of the crowd at least where we're going. Okay, what are they playing now?
Does that disappoint them at all? I mean, when I see a band I like, I don't expect to know all of the songs. In fact, I prefer not to know all.
It's or you win some, you lose some. It's a really tricky thing when you're writing a set list. You can't only play the most expected stuff because if you keep doing that, you're playing the same show over several tours. So we always try to throw in some, curveballs because we know some people might lose interest or might not be into that song or might not know that song.
Beer?
Yeah, but they go get a beer, go for the toilet or whatever. Yeah. But it's so amazing to see, the eyes of the hardcore fans. Yeah. The ones who really...
like, no way. No
man,
way.
I never thought I heard this live.
They probably got their phone out. And they're not even filming. They're like, Dad, you're not going to believe it. remember when when I told you there was this band that I really liked and I said, they do all these songs about military history, Dad, and you love military history. And you said, I'll check them out. And then you picked up Metalizer and you said, what the hell are you talking about? Well, they're playing one of the songs that you wouldn't be interested in. Never mind, Dad. See you at home. See you. So there were a lot of those phone calls in the Netherlands that night. So there were a lot of Dutch people talking like this. It was ongelooflijk. That's one of the few Dutch words I know.
Okay.
I know it because the Incredible Hulk is die ongelooflijke Hulken.
I think I remember a few. Something about take your pants off and put them on your head and noken in the coking.
But here's the thing. If you said that to the Hulk, because it's the Hulk, he's not known for his intelligence when he's the Hulk, right? He might be so surprised, he'd be like, yeah, okay. Yeah, and then he'd take his pants off and put them on his head. And then you could see what the Hulk is actually packing.
Well, you heard it here first.
This channel goes to some freaky places sometimes. I'll tell you that.
From carpet bombing to Hulk.
From carpet bombing to Hulk and what he's packing.
Yes.
All in one episode. That's what you get on Sabaton History. But I didn't realize, when I did realize that this was the last of the regular songs, I've been, as I was talking to Per in one of the episodes we were doing today, I've been enjoying perhaps more than the regular songs doing bonus tracks and preludes and things that people don't expect and stuff, because then we have to really... You think more about the story behind it, and you guys think more about what do you want to say about it and stuff. And
and especially the specials, or the deeper dives, looking at the other perspectives. I liked Soldier of Three Armies, with 3 episodes,
that was cool.
And especially with those, there is enough time that I learned so much more.
Yeah. Well, me too. Well, I didn't know very much about Lauri Jalantoni, so it's good to...
So many new things there. So, still not too late. We are going to keep on existing in some way, some form, somehow.
Yeah, we're not done yet, so we'll tell you when we're done. Yep. Don't you run away. Don't worry. But for us today, though,
yes,
that is it for us this time.
At Sabaton History.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, you know the drill. You click, 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 get some subscriptions, check out Indie's other channels, become a Patreon. That's it. Get the fuck out of here.